all, I hope you're having a fantastic Friday. I know it took a minute to get this episode out, but I had a problem where I lost my first recording of me painting these Azers. Just kind of bear with me, if you will. My whole schedule was really thrown off because after that I didn't have any more resin to print, so I had to wait for more of that stuff to come in, and then I was really busy with work during the last 2 weeks, so it's been a bit of a struggle. But eventually I printed off 5 more, and here we are. Azer. This week we are talking about Azers, or Azers. I actually don't know how to pronounce them. I guess I'm going to go with Azers. They're not dwarves, though they do look like them quite a bit. They're actually elementals, and they're native to the elemental plane of fire. They look kind of like they have like a bronzed skin, and they only speak Ignan, the language of the fire elementals. I, of course, didn't know this before I painted them, even for a second time, that they had sort of a bronze shell to their skin. So I kind of painted them like they were dark-skinned dwarves, because the way that I think about them was that before this, just by looking at the picture. I didn't actually know that they were like created beings or anything. And the way that I think about them now is that they kind of look like and are fire elementals in like a humanoid dwarf shell, almost like a robot that they pilot or something. They're supposed to be master craftsmen and expert miners, which is good because they're made rather than born. They make the bodies, and then one of the elementals does a bit of mitosis and splits into a new Azer. It is interesting that they don't make the bodies like you would in a factory, though. Rather, each one is sculpted with distinct features, so they remind me a bit of the Warforged, who also have very distinctive features on each one of their shells. Maybe this is the elemental version of created life. Another way they're like Warforged is that there's a history of a race trying to enslave them. That would be the Ifriti, a monstrous race of genies. According to their shared history, Azers built the Ifriti city called the City of Brass. Apparently, the Ifriti are super paranoid and wanted to enslave them after they finished helping to build the city, so that Azers could never tell the city's secrets. Judging by how the Azers act, though, they probably would not have spilled those secrets, but now they threaten the Ifriti with revealing the secrets so that way the Ifriti actually leave them alone. Interestingly, the city is supposed to be the most wondrous place in creation, which leads me to believe that it would be really cool to have an adventure there, or for just PCs to sort of visit. Nowadays, though, Azers dwell in, around, and near volcanoes and calderas. This makes me think that they need the heat, although it says that they're focused on the gems and minerals around these lava flows. They apparently enjoy creating things of beauty out of metal and gems, and their magic items are the best made ever when they're called to the material realm to make them. The book says that they don't require rest, food, or water, but I really dislike it when races of intelligent beings don't need any of these things. So when I DM, any intelligent race of beings will need something. Instead of rest, maybe they require being very close to high amounts of heat to recharge their flame. Instead of food or water, maybe they consume raw metals like copper or tin to reinforce their body with the brass they combine to make. Actually, here's an idea. Perhaps the older an Azer gets, the better reinforced its shell is. Older Azers could consume all sorts of different metals to better reinforce their bodies, or even add gems to their manufactured ears in like a facsimile of earrings or something. It would set them apart, and it would make them look distinct, and kind of give players a bit of warning about what an elder Azer might look like before they start trying to murder them. You know, PCs always trying to murder everything that isn't humanoid. If I'm a DM and I'm using these guys as monsters, they definitely wouldn't be in a random encounter or a wandering pack. I could see the PCs being hired to steal something they made or something that belongs to them, since they do make the best magic items and jewelry. In a fight, I would have them probably use very powerful magic items or elemental style tactics. They would probably use the environment to their advantage, jumping very close or right around high sources of heat like a furnace or lava flows or things like that. Something that the PCs would definitely say, maybe I just try to engage it at range or something, because one slip and all of a sudden you're taking like 20d6 lava damage. As NPCs, though, they could hire the PCs to do the opposite, recover a magic item or crafted piece that was stolen from them. since they can create magic items and very good ones, they could be very good friends for the party while also being kind of dangerous to be around since they're always burning and always around sort of sources of high heat. I could see this being a very good way to allow the PCs to choose a magic item each for their character. I find that in a lot of 5 and 6 man parties in D&D 5th edition, we usually find maybe 3 good magic items max, and then half the party is just told, nah, you can't have a good magic item. Or even worse, one of those magic items that are given are useful overall, but just kind of useless to the party. In my mind, that's kind of a slap in the face because you can't sell them, can't really get what you want. So unless somebody is an artificer and can just make magic items for the party, you're kind of out of luck. I can see this being a race that has an answer to the problem of magic items not being readily available to the PCs. Because I mean, if you're playing a campaign through months and you don't find any magic items or any good magic items, then it kind of begins to feel a little bit stale, because leveling up in 5th edition is okay. I mean, every couple sessions and everything, but you need something like a good reward, and gold just isn't that in 5th edition. There comes a point where you just don't need any more gold after a little while. Also, Azers could be really strong allies and very dangerous enemies. They could not just make magic items now, but maybe in the future as well as the PCs level up, because in the beginning they may say, okay, well, you're only really level like 3 or 4, so let me give you a small magic item in reward for a small quest, but then later on they might have a larger one for them. I would allow a PC to play as an Azer, but probably with restrictions. I would ask them to just use the Warforged racial stat block and then give them something in the Warforged kit for like some sort of fire resistance. Usually I'd probably ask them to give up something to get that fire resistance in the kit. We could justify it by saying that Azers in the material plane are affected by fire coming from that plane because it's not as pure like in the elemental plane of fire, and the damage comes from the impurities being absorbed in the shell of the Azer. That would be kind of a good example of how I would have a PC that was essentially a fire elemental inside of a metal shell. I think that would be really cool to play. And you could, even though they only speak Ignan, you could say that they, maybe some of them learned another language or something, or perhaps they created some sort of a magical item that allowed them to speak with others in a normal way, or maybe even in an intoned robot way. That's really all I could find about Azers, but I wanted to talk a little bit about one of the campaigns that I was in because we had a session on Thursday and it was kind of cool. We were playing through the Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and I'll have to say it feels very good. It feels real different than I thought it would. We're in a land of fairies and fae, but it's really cool. There's really good antagonists that are nasty as can be. They're called the Hourglass Coven. It's a set of 3 hags. They're very difficult. Hags are extremely difficult in 5th edition to take out completely. And they're irredeemably evil, so you can really just kind of wail on them if you really want to. Or one of the neat things about this particular campaign setting is that if you don't want to fight at all for some reason, like no fights at all, you could go through the entire campaign without actually getting into a fight. Of course, that's not how we do it, because we have a bunch of people who are, you want to fight in 5th edition. You got to fight. One thing that's interesting is that we are able to kind of pick and choose our fights. We can see the DM giving us alternatives to fights, which is really fun. So, for instance, in one scenario, we saw a couple of giant snakes that were just laying there sleeping, and we knew that if we didn't speak loudly or argue or create loud noises, we wouldn't wake them up, and therefore we wouldn't have to fight them. In another instance, there's rules that you have to follow in the Witchlight. They're kind of in this Fey realm. So one of the rules of the Feywild is the rule of hospitality. When a friend, an enemy, or a stranger enters your home, you are expected to be gracious and accommodating to them until such a time as they prove by their actions or words undeserving of this hospitality. Where this kind of is really cool is that when we went to confront the hag, she could not simply attack us and be done. She couldn't just say, haha, cackle, cackle, and then blast us, and that's it. And we knew that it was going to be a really hard fight. Recently, we actually went after one of the hags. So I, unfortunately, was the person who broke the rule of hospitality, because not only did I insult her in her home multiple times, because I was trying to, one of the other characters was sneaking around trying to find the stolen item that would give our fairy PC, by the way, back his fashion sense. And so I was trying to distract her. And one of the ways that I started talking about how these frogs outside were like insulting her and calling her names, and she got really angry and flustered and frustrated by that. And I kind of started taking it a little bit too far by doing it myself. And then I grabbed this bundle of sticks that I had bought earlier from a merchant or whatever, and I threw it on the ground, and I was like, yeah, if you could just stand right there so I can light that on fire and just burn right up, that would be great, because you need to go, lady. That was when the DM informed me that I'd broken the rule of hospitality. And it actually came with a curse too after we were done with the fight. So I'm a druid, moon druid. I transform into animals and stuff to fight in combat, a little bit better than normal druids, that is. And this adventure is really perfect for those types of druids, and I didn't know this before I made him, but there are so many beasts in this adventure, and weird ones too, so anytime I see one, I can then transform into it. So like those giant snakes from earlier, I can transform into it. So later on, I was trying to transform into a giant snake to eat a guy or do something, snake business. Instead, I transformed into a baboon, and it hurt me too a little bit. Like, it hurt my character, but didn't do hit point damage, if that makes sense. It was very uncomfortable. And that's when I learned about the curse, and I got an H on my arm, like kind of like a scarlet letter type of H. And so I'm trying to now, I guess I have to, it's kind of like a Gaius, where remove curse doesn't quite work on it, but it does bring the curse down to manageable levels. So if our cleric casts remove curse on me at the beginning of the day, it lasts 24 hours, and it kind of makes it so the curse isn't quite as noticeable. I'm able to transform into animals that I want to without there being quite so high of a dice roll needed to do that. After we messed up that hag, and we did mess her up really bad, she eventually skittered off into the ethereal plane like hags do. It's almost impossible to kill a hag unless you do it in one turn. If they want to escape, they will escape. So then we came back to the frog village from her hut, and we found out that she had placed a bounty on all of our heads and told those frogs, like, whoever kills them, or I guess detains them, has my favor, and she gave them a magic item and this and that. And so what we did was we set up a coup against the king that was there, this like frog king. But there was like a lot of coups that went on, and each frog's reign only lasted like 6 or 7 days. And every time they died, their heads would be put on pikes, but they would still stay sort of alive. I guess they wouldn't be able to really feel a whole lot, but so there's these like 10 talking heads on this pike. So then we stole them, we didn't steal them. I guess we did ask their permission first. We told them all about how we could make, if we replace the current king, we could make their heads into a museum instead of on pikes, and perhaps they could impart their knowledge to the new king, and hopefully he wouldn't be deposed quite so quickly. And maybe their children could learn from them or something like that. It had a real Futurama vibe to it. I discussed maybe jars, and one of them asked if they could have a servant to scratch their noses when they were itchy. I was like, yeah, sure, I don't care. We decided that we wanted to do this coup, but we wanted to be as bloodless as possible, because we didn't want to take the defenders of like the so-called knights there's like frog knights, I guess, out of this kingdom because we would need them in the future, or at least I thought that we might need them in the future. So this is another example of how when we went to go depose the king, we really tried not to use combat. We were trying to call him like a usurper, and we were talking about how like he broke the rule of hospitality by murdering the former king, and that's why they're cursed to have, be just heads that are still alive. Unfortunately, it didn't roll high enough on the convincing part of that. He didn't believe me, so they decided to have a trial by combat where they appointed 2 champions, and one of the other PCs who was hiding in the shadows jumped out when he pointed toward, he said, "My most dependable knight," and he points, and there's this like bird creature sitting there like, and Mike goes, "Me?" and the king's like, "Wait, what?" And he goes, "I accept." And so this little bird creature, this little PC is supposed to be the like king, the false king's champion, and we pick our barbarian to be our champion. And so he goes up and gets all pumped up because there's this frog that's kind of like a fight fixer, and he goes up, he's like, "Don't worry, kid, you got this, no problem, you're gonna get him, you're gonna go and you're gonna sucker punch her right there, you get a sucker punch her right as soon as you get up there." And he gets them all pumped up, and Mike comes up there and punches the ever-loving crap out of this barbarian, sneak attack damage and everything, does it for like 14 damage, and then the barbarian just kind of turns her chin around with his fist still on it, and it's like, "I would like to rage, please." And Mike's like, "Oh crap!" And then that barbarian just beat the ever-loving snot out of the poor bird. She took a little bit of damage at first until, and then she dragged him over to the pond and was gonna drown him in it. And this was where we come in, because the whole thing is we all obviously don't want our bird guy to die, one of the PCs to die. So I cast an air bubble around him just before he went underwater, and then she faked like she was drowning him for a couple minutes. And when he finally went still, the king was like, "Oh, we must make sure that he's actually dead," and blah blah blah. So then we conjured up a catfish from the lake and swallowed him up. So the guy that we wanted to set up as king was like, "We won't be able to do any kind of medical checks on him now because he's dead and swallowed up in that catfish's belly. You're just going to have to abdicate." And the king was like, "No, I'll never give up. I'll never blah, blah." And our barbarian just turns around and she says, "Well, we always have violence in our back pocket." And then she looked over at me, and I tried to transform into a giant snake and eat him. Unfortunately, because of my curse, it went awry. And when the DM rolled on the chart, he rolled a nat 20 it was like a 1 to 20 chart. And on a 20, a natural 20, that is, I turned into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I all of a sudden turned into this enormous Jurassic Park looking T-Rex and just swallow this old king up in like 2 big chomps. Yeah, that was the end of him. That was really funny. And I'll tell you, that line, we want to make it into shirts. We always have violence in our back pocket. I love that line. That totally is D&D in my mind. It just absolutely is. So that was our latest little soiree into this campaign. It's been a lot of fun. Justin's done a fantastic job running it, and we've all just been laughing the whole time pretty much. I'm playing a hairless druid. So it was a druid in the beginning of the Wild Beyond the Witchlight. You have to choose something dear to you that's been taken, and usually it's not like, it's like something to do with your character. So I chose for them to take my hair. So I'm hairless, and anytime I change into any animal, they're always hairless as well. So it's a big old brown bear that's like hairless, or I change into a hairless cat. And of course I can't change into any animal that can fly, because when I change into like a bird, it doesn't have any feathers or hair on it. Recently in one of the in the hag's hut, we discovered a nest of giant hornets. So now I can change into a giant hornet. So at least I'll be able to fly now because I'll have insect wings. But before that, it was real touch and go. Anyway, that just about wraps up this episode. I hope you guys had fun. And this actually wraps up the A's too. That's a real milestone. I didn't know if I'd get past even all of the A's, much less, to the B's or the C's or the D's. So next up, we're going to have Banshees. That's the next one. I don't know. Maybe I'll use the GW model for Banshee. Their Banshees look really good. So I have one that I think my daughter painted a long time ago when she was like 4 or 5. And I think I might just repaint it for this. So next up is going to be Banshees. Hope you guys have a fantastic day.